Thank you very much for coming to this lunchtime seminar. I would like to introduce Rohan Marhava, whom you already know quite well, or many of you know him quite well. Rohan has been telling me for a long time how great some of these AI programming tools are and how much productivity enhancers they are. And so at some point, we really would like to see how software developers who are very proficient with these tools actually use them in practice, and how the rest of us can learn about this. And so this is how this seminar came by. The idea for this seminar came by from this, that there are some people like Rohan who are using these tools for quite a while already and are very proficient with them, and then so it would be good to propagate this knowledge to the rest of the CSA. And so Rohan graciously agreed to give a presentation about this, and including actually showing examples. And so with that, Rohan, thank you very much for coming and giving this presentation, and let's get started.
Thanks. Thank you, Vlad. Yeah, so I gave a similar talk previously during the summer, and it was mostly theoretical in the sense that, the concepts that we need to learn and, what should be the mindset when approaching these problems, what's different things like context and prompting and stuff like that. I'll not be going over those things this time. I'll although drop the link to the presentation in the Slack announce channel next in the thread where Shannon posted the announcement. If anyone's new here and wants to check out that link, they can go ahead and look at those concepts. Today I'm going to be more focused towards actual hands-on. I've picked a use case which is an actual real-world problem we have in Illinois Chat codebase, and I'll try to solve it with three different, or we'll see if time permits three. Otherwise, I'll take two different approaches at least to show you how we can use AI to solve these problems specific to coding. So I have, most of you might have heard about this IDE called Cursor. I have Cursor here. I don't see any code right now. I can see the code if I want to, but I'm not looking at that for now. Yes. Sure.
Thank you. Awesome.
Yeah, also, anyone on the Zoom, if you have any questions, I want this to be an interactive session. So if you have any questions, feel free to just unmute yourself and ask your questions. So let me jump into the use case. So we have Illinois Chat, and we have chats and conversations. So let me describe what the problem is right now. You see this entire conversation. This is a long conversation. And every time we send a message, we are retrieving like 100 chunks of documents before we generate a response. Now, the issue here is, like after I reach here, say for example, if I send this response again, this message again, this chat will break. Like it'll break entirely. It'll break the entire application. And I explain why that happens in a moment when that happens. By the way, that latency is OpenAI API call, not from our systems. Well, that worked. I am surprised. Maybe I need to send one more message to do that. Okay, let's try one more message. Well, things don't break when we want them to break. But anyway, let me get to what the real issue is. So what's happening here right now, all of these conversations when this page load are loaded here in the browser. That's why we can see them. The issue is that when we send these messages back, when you press enter here, at that time, all of those messages are sent to the server from the browser, which eventually, after there are more number of messages in the same conversation, like say, for example, 7, 8, or 10, the conversation just entirely breaks because we exceed the limits of what a REST API can take. So let's approach towards solving this problem. I'll show like 2 different ways on how we can do this. I'm here in Cursor, and I've been, for a while, this hasn't been available, but they've added a new feature called Plan. I used to do this workflow for a while, where I used to generate, I used to ask AI to first analyze the code base and create a plan on how it would fix it before just asking it to do some X changes to my code base. So here I'll, describe my problem, which is all the conversations from the server are fetched into the browser when the conversation loads. And when we send the message, when there are more number of messages, it breaks. And I need to figure out what the reason is and make this design pattern more scalable, in the sense that whenever I send a message, only that particular message is sent to the server, and rest everything is already in the database, so we can fetch from there. So I need to figure out how to create a plan for this. And you see, I'm using a tool here called Whisperflow. Whatever I said just now, it's all here in the prompt. I always feel that whenever we talk, we are able to add more context to the problem, and that is why it helps in better prompts. Like if you just type this, it would have taken me more time. But I just said that those 3 or 4 sentences, and now I can just generate a plan. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's see what it comes up with. It will most probably come up with a few follow-up questions after analyzing the code base. And you see it'll go into the relevant files. It's actually reading the correct files right now. Or actually, wait. I did one wrong thing. Let me choose the model that I usually use, which is GPT-5 Codex. And I'll get to the models as well. Or maybe I can do that right now. I've been using Claude models for the past around, 1.5 years since Claude 3.5 released. But recently, since the launch of GPT-5 and especially GPT-5 Codex, I have been anything that requires intelligence, I always use GPT-5 Codex. It's just better. Like it's better at instruction following. There is another, very weird quirk with these models where after a while of working, especially in agentic fashion, some of these models become hasty to respond to the user. Like, you'll see it in reasoning traces where it'll say, I have been working on this problem for a while, I need to respond to the user, and it'll end up not completing the task entirely, which we really want to do. We want it to, work for a longer time and get to the final step. Even though it says that these are the to-dos, it'll just leave at, say, for example, 2 out of 4 to-dos and say, I have done this work, and can I proceed with the next? Well, I don't want you to do that. I want you to go ahead and completely solve the problem. And that's where I believe GPT-5 Codex really shines. It, by far, has been the only model that I've seen which is able to do this accurately. Instead of coming back to me, asking more follow-up questions, should I go ahead? Should I asking for approvals and stuff like that? While this is working, I'll jump into a blog post which is talking about something very similar to what I'm talking right now. This is from Peter. He's pretty much a prominent figure in AI coding, vibe coding kind of world, and he's also talking about something very similar to what I'm talking about. He's saying that agentic engineering is becoming so good that it writes pretty much all of my code now, and people are trying to solve these problems, and they have elaborate things to get their stuff done. He talks about Claude Code where he works it, and a couple of generic things where he said that he has a huge code base, giving some context around what he works in, and this is where I kind of agree with him. He says that I've completely moved to Codex CLI as daily driver. I run between 3 to 8 in parallel in a terminal grid, and he experimented with work trees, but always reverted back to his regular workflow. I do that as well. Like if you see here in my windows, I have 1, 2, and 3 IDEs windows open, and all of these are just different folders. I'm not working with Git work trees or anything else. I just have 3 different folders, and I'm working on them independently. They do atomic commits. All of this is fine. Model picker, this is what I was talking about. He says that pretty much everything he does is on GPT-5 codecs, which is, by the way, the default in the codecs CLI tool. It's a great compromise of smart and speed. I believe it is not a good compromise for speed, but it is a great compromise for smartness. Whenever I want something smart done, I always go for GPT-5 codecs. And I'll get to the speed part. There's one new model which I really like, and we'll take it for a run. Blast radius. This is a good terminology. Blast radius is basically something, when you come up with a problem statement, you're going to solve this in your code base. How many files is it going to touch? What is the radius of change that it is going to make? How many features can it break? That's what blast radius mainly means here. And I'll not get into work trees. It just makes the dev process slow, I believe. You can just have multiple folders, to be honest. Cloud code. This is the most controversial part because a lot of people really like Cloud code, and those who like Cloud code have not moved to anything else so far. And this is where I very much agree with him, because I am just tired of the model. After making a mistake, when I correct it, it says, you're absolutely right. Well, you were supposed to be right. I was not supposed to be. And this is where I believe Codex has come a long way. It will not be a sycophant in the sense that it will not try to mollycoddle you. It will just get to the point and give you the information in a very concise manner. Some other benefits. We can get into these, but I mean, it's not very important. It's just very basic stuff that it has a larger context. It does. This is a good one because efficient token use. I believe Claude spends a lot of tokens to solve a problem as compared to Codex. And here I'll show you an example. This is my usage summary so far of Cursor. I have only used Claude 4.5 Sonnet for testing. I have just to get the vibe of what the model looks like, and it spent 40 million tokens. This is one of the models that I most commonly use. You can see it is 50 million, and if you see the cost associated with it, Claude 4.5 Sonnet is way higher than what CAII is, or even if you compare it with GPT-5 Codex, which is here. This is or this one. You'll see 35 million, approximately 36 million tokens is $10, and here you'll see 40 million tokens is almost $33. So I have at least seen in my practice so far that Claude spends so much tokens to solve the same problem that GPT-5 Codex does in very less. These are just some features that he's talking about in the tool itself. Why not harness? So this is where it gets interesting. I was using the plan mode here, and we'll get into this plan mode in a second. But what I want to really talk about, and what this, even this title means at the top, this one, just talk to it. I think this is one of the workflow changes that I very recently saw. Let me get back there. Yeah, that you don't need a plan always. With Codex, I was very easily just able to talk to it, just like I added my prompt here. I'll just talk to it, ask it a question, and it'll be much more collaborative in the sense that it'll figure out stuff. And if I give it a task, even if it is a high-level task, it'll actually break it down into smaller steps and solve it without any plan. It is the only tool so far that I have seen which does this accurately without needing a plan. And this is what Peter is trying to talk about here. Cursor and tab completion. I think for me, I have been a Cursor user for over, I guess, 2 years now, or a year and a half, somewhere around that. But one of the greatest things about Cursor is that the tab auto completion feature. When I really want to get into the code and I'm doing some changes, I'll just make a change. For example, I want to do a small refactor of a field name. For example, in our code base for Illinois chat, we have a duplicate field name. One is called course name and the other is called project name. Both mean the same thing. If I'm trying to make a change, I changed course name to project name. In one place, it'll automatically start suggesting me across my files. Not even in the same file, but even across the files. So I think that's another place where Cursor really shines. But what he's talking about here is, not even looking at the code base. You just dive into the CLI tool, talk to it, ask it to understand the code base, and then go from there. I'll pause here for a minute because this is a long blog post. I'll continue this while I'll just quickly review this plan. Are you all able to see this? Yeah, okay. So here it's saying it's investigating the current flow, adjust the conversation APIs. He's saying that, add or extend a messages endpoint, which is fine. Build a dedicated hook here for the pagination. We will refactor the front-end side. We'll have to do that because right now all of this is happening on the client side, on the browser. So we'll be moving this to the server. By the way, if I'm going fast, please feel free to interrupt me and ask questions. Then we'll have another send message path, replaces usage. Yeah, that's right. And testing and validation. Okay. So I'll ask it to ignore this for now. We'll get into this, but in a separate workflow. So you see, it came up with a plan for me, and I've manually edited that plan, and now I'll just hit build. And now it'll, do its thing. Let's jump back. I'll be doing this context switching in case someone is confused, because that's how my daily life has become now. Like I just ask AI to do something, and it'll take like 5 minutes to do it. So I'll probably spend my time doing something else. So back to this. It's talking about open models. Let's ignore that. Open models are just not good enough right now. Plan mode and approach. Now, this is what we were just discussing, right? What the benchmarks have suggested is that Codex reads much more files before deciding what to do. I think this is what sets Codex, GPT-5 Codex, or even the Codex apart. This is why it is able to solve long-running problems and able to do more work without a plan. Because in general, when I send some requests to the model, it'll just spend so much time reading the files before it comes up with a solution. Even if it is like a one-line change. First, it'll investigate the code base to see what are the relevant files, what things are connected, before it'll try to solve anything. And then he talks about plugins and sub-agents. We'll just ignore all of this. How I write prompts. I just did this in front of you guys. He suggests using whisper flow. Like, it's basically, you see this small thing at the bottom of my screen. This is the hovering thing. I just have to press one key, and I can, whatever I talk, it is transcribed in my text box, whichever text box is focused at that time. So if you say, go to San Francisco, that's it. That's all I need to do. Very helpful in writing prompts, extremely helpful in adding context. Because if you're imagine you're talking to your someone on your teammate, like Chen is here. I'm talking to Chen with around one problem, in Illinois chat. We are kind of trying to come at the same page on which files are buggy, or what is the context around this, what files might be related but are not affected by it, something like that. When we talk about it, we both get understanding. That works the same way with these AI tools. Like when you talk to it, you end up adding much more details or context, which help eventually to solve the problem. And let's get into web-based agents. So, there are these 3 types of workflows right now. So the first one is a full-fledged IDE. The second one is the CLI tools like Codex. And the third one is background agents. Background agents is what this web-based agent is. So for example, the other day, Chen told me, there is this bug in our code base, in our Slack channel. And I just tagged cursor, and I asked it to, solve the problem. I just added some context to say, do this or do that. And it started a background agent. And when the task was finished, it came back with a PR for me. Let me show you an example. Let me see if I can pull that up. Just give me one quick second. Okay. So let's see this. So Luigi here sent a message. He said that there is one of these field called allow logged in users. This is present in one of our databases and is not exposed on the web interface as of now. What it does is allow any logged in user to use your chatbot. It's a very basic thing, but it's not available right now. So I just tagged cursor here and asked, this task is manual. Can you help me expose this flag on the share chatbot model? I just added this. This is the only keyword that it needed, right? This is the place where it had to expose it. And I said, fetch it from the Redis. It should be present irrespective of the config is true. So just a couple of details here. And, I sent it at 4.6, and in an hour it came with a solution. This is not an hour because I had a few follow-ups which don't show up here, but this is after my 3 messages. Like I modified my original message to make some changes. Like, for example, we had one public-private toggle too. So I wanted to combine that to make it a drop-down instead. So this is my 3 messages that took an hour. Completely outside of my usual coding workflow, completely async, no need to look into the code or anything. This is really helpful for small tasks. Like this one was pretty easy, right? Like this is just one field you want to expose on the web interface. For things like that, which are very small and it's there in Slack, the problem. You can just put the solution there and it'll do the stuff for you. So it is really helpful in those cases where tasks are small. You see, it's like 90 lines of change, not much. And most of it is just the UI of it. So it'll most probably be, the core logic of it would be at 20 or 25 lines. What happened here? Okay, yeah. So these are the 3 workflows we have right now for AI coding. One is the IDE, the second is CLI tools, and the third one is web agents. I'm talking about CLI tool, but I am not jumping into it right now. I'll do that in a while. And then he says agentic journey. There are tools like Conductor, Terragon, which kind of, they're like hobby projects which were created to control more number of agents. Like for example, Conductor can spin off multiple Claude Code agents. But I just find after using them that either they're just always playing catch up with the latest features that the main team of Claude Code releases or the Codex team releases, or they have some bugs. So I always end up coming back to my core workflow of using Cursor. Okay, yeah, this one is very interesting. Let's talk about MCPs. MCPs became a very big thing, but as a user, after a while, I just found that when I have to configure and maintain my MCPs in one of my clients, I just find there is a huge performance degradation because of context bloat. Like there are several thousand lines of code in every MCP tool, describing what it does or even exposing stuff. And the problem with MCP tools is that these tools are always exposed to the chat interface, right? Like for example, if I am using Cursor right now and I have, say for example, some context-based MCP like Context 7, or I have browser tool, but I don't need them all the time. I only need them in certain workflows. So for that reason, I always find that MCP tools themselves are very helpful when they are configured within the tool by the devs. Like for example, here is an MCP tool, the browser, but this is a button here. So it's not always enabled for me. It's not bloating my context all the time. I can just click it when I do really want to use it. And I will use it now once we are complete. That's why I asked it to ignore the testing, because we'll use the browser to actually test what it did. So yes, that's my opinion on MCPs. Unless you really have the need to do MCPs, or if you're configuring it in some tool as a dev, then it's perfectly fine. But if you are the user and you have to configure MCPs in one of your clients, it's often just going to degrade your performance. Well, the AI code is slop. The slop part is very interesting because when you give AI some task to solve, some context to solve, it will have some X way of solving that problem. But what if you have rules in place to give the best practices? For example, I have been encouraging my team for Illinois Chat to don't use effect. Use effect is like an asynchronous function that runs based on some hook or some change in one of the variables. So, for example, in here in Illinois Chat, there is one hook there is one use effect which fetches the conversations whenever the user is found, whenever the user is logged in. So, I'm finding the conversation only for that user. Now, this happens asynchronously, and it happens on every change to the user field. So, for example, I was not logged in, so my unique identifier will be used to find the conversations. But if I am logged in, my email will be used. So in that intermittent loading stage, there will be race conditions. Like maybe I was logged in, but my conversations were found before that. This is one of the things that often kind of complicate the web these web frameworks like React, where use effect often creates more problems than it solves. So Peter here is again saying this, that to reduce slop, you just need good rules. Either you say that in your prompt, or you have those rules set in your code base at an entire code base level. So you can use it, your teammates can use it, everyone can use it. Spec-driven development. So this is very similar to what we are doing here. We first created the specs for the change, and then we started this problem solving. And he says that he uses GPT-5 Pro here for reviewing and for creating the spec. I found that GPT-5 Codex does it pretty well. Like I haven't had a use case where GPT-5 Codex came up with a wrong plan. Like in this case, see, the plan was very accurate. I did not have to change even a single line. I just added one change which I just had an opinion about. It wasn't necessary, and it's complete. So let's see. It did the API separation. Let's make this bigger. Let's close the plan. Are you all still able to see it? Well, it made several changes. Let me just read the status and we'll go from there. It said it's completed. Front-end sync refactor is in progress. So see, this is what I was talking about. It was supposed to complete the entire task, the entire plan, but it still ended up with one thing in progress, which, it still needs a paginated messages endpoint matching React query. So it's giving me some next steps which it wants to do. So I'll just ask it to continue. We'll get back to that.
Rohan, just a quick question.
Yep.
Could you show us how you set the rules in your code base?
I don't have them right now. I'm working without any rules.
Okay, is there a way to do it? Like, do you know how one sets it? Is it per prompt, or is there a way you can say for a code base, like, don't use effect in this entire code base?
Right. So specifically in cursor, you can have a .cursor folder here, and it can have .cursor.rules, like I can show you. Say, for example, rules, and I'll add a project-based rule. This project means code base, so you can have multiple layers of rules. This one is at the entire IDE level. Like this will be used for every call that I make across any project. And here you can create a project rule. I'll say React query, for example. Always use React query for API calls. So you'll see it added a .cursor/rules here, and then you can just use version control. Like you can just push this so your teammates can also use it.
Awesome, thanks.
Let's close this. We don't need this anymore. Okay, awesome. So yeah, what Peter is talking about is again the same thing around spec-driven development. That for Cloud Code, for Cursor, for longer running tasks, we usually have to create these plans before we can jump into the implementation. Otherwise, they don't work well. Like they'll just do some random thing, or they keep asking questions to clarify what needs to be done. So this kind of works very differently in Codex because, as he says at the top, just talk to it. Like if you just add the details while you're talking to it, it'll solve most of the problems. Slash commands. I haven't jumped into slash commands yet, but I feel I have read about it and I found some of them really helpful, especially when you want to maintain like some best practices in your team. For example, you want your PRs to be created with a specific format. For example, you want the title at the top, you want the description, you want what the changes were done, and at the end, for example, the steps to test the changes. So having a /PR create itself is quite helpful, in my opinion. Like, I haven't used it yet, but I definitely will in the future. There are a few others which he says here are good. So he has a /commit where it only allows the model to commit those files which he had made changes to, which the AI had made changes to. So there are like clean comments. There are only the files that are changed added, so that you don't have like, for example, some other file was unstaged and it stages them and commits them. Similarly, /review. I think /review is again something cool because there are several like code review tools like CodeRabbit, and even Cursor has one called BugBot, and Vercel has one, ChatGPT has one, but all of them have their own quirks. So I find that doing this locally is much more easy because you're in the flow. Like you can really read it, and then maybe you don't even need you don't even need to accept every suggestion it makes. Like it could be something which is a false flag. So yeah, I think / commands are really cool, and if anyone has any experience trying this out and has worked for them, feel free to share right now. Okay. Let's jump to this one. So agents Claude file. So this is the same thing like Visu, you just talked about rules, right? So this is the agents.claude file. Everyone has their own format now. Claude has a claude.md, but I see that most of them are generalizing to agents.md instead of things like this cursor.cursor/rules, so that all of these agentic tools can have a common interface or format on where the rules will be present. Here again is the problem where Claude reacts really well to screaming all caps. Like there was this that 1.5 year of using Claude for like as a primary model which I used for development. I found it a lot of the times that I was screaming at it, like because it was not doing the right job. I was writing all caps, and I was pointing it to the right direction, and it would always respond with "You're absolutely right," which I would find very frustrating. I think this is one thing that Codex has really done well. I have never seen it say "You're absolutely right." It'll just do the job. It'll not be a sycophant and try to make me happy and just actually go ahead and try to solve the problem. This is exactly what he says in this entire block, that GPT-5 just does it. Like it'll not care about any other thing. He also mentions a bit about React compiler and how it helps the GPT-5 to solve problems better. But I think that's something that does not fit into my use case, so I'll just ignore it. So GPT-5 is perfect. Codex is perfect. It's not really. I don't think it's perfect, like because you still have to be in the flow. Whereas, say for example, in this plan mode, I'm completely off the flow, right? Like I'm talking to you guys, and it's happening in the background right now. I'm not even caring about what it is doing right now. With GPT-5 Codex, it's more that I have to be in the flow, asking questions, trying to understand before I ask it to make a change, which helps a lot because, like he says that it's not just that you want the model to solve a problem, but it is also that you want to understand how that problem needs to be solved. And with these, async, longer-running processes, it's more like you're just offloading the task and you don't know what's happening unless you go ahead and review it, which is the bottleneck these days. But with Codex, you're more in the flow. You are constantly reading what it is telling you and what changes it is making. Although I'm not a huge fan of CLI tools because I want to stay in my code base. I want to look at what changes have been made, and CLI tools just take it off it. But Codex does a really good job of making sure that it touches minimum files to make the fix or a new feature. Whereas I found Claude, if any of you guys have used Claude, you might have noticed when you ask it to make a change and you don't have many rules around it, it'll just create a random .md file explaining what it did, like just as a documentation of the feature. Well, if I want the documentation, I'll ask for it, but I have not, so I don't need it, which is something, again, Codex does not do at all. Yep, he does add this one annoyance that I also feel that when scrolling up, some of the lines get lost in Codex, which kind of becomes annoying because you don't know what happened in that step when it made a change. And that's it. Yeah, I think he's whatever he said here, I completely agree with like almost 90% of it. I don't write code anymore. I just think about high level stuff like what should be the design pattern, what should be the system architecture, and I offload the coding part to the model. Well, it's still working. How many files has it changed? Only 2. Very interesting. Let's take a look. Yep, it's at least changing the correct files. Okay, so now what I'll do is, I'll copy this, and we'll also try to solve this in a separate place with Codex. I'll give it full access. And we'll see how this goes. As you see, I did not change anything at all. I just changed the approvals to full, and I'm still using the default Codex model. And it created a plan by itself, since I gave it a long task. Next steps you might take. Sure, go ahead and build it. Why am I typing? If you have any questions, let me know. Sure. So we have 2 separate code bases, 2 separate folders, same model, different tools, trying to solve the same thing, and they'll most probably come up with a different solution. And we'll see how those are different. I have this code base open here as well. So we will see what changes it makes. This in. Okay, yeah, I have this open. So it's also reading similarly the relevant files, checking the message queries. This was also the first thing it did in this one, and still working. Any questions so far while this is working? No? Anyone would like to share what their workflow is? What's your favorite tool? Should I randomly put someone on the spot? Chen, what do you use?
I'm old-fashioned. I use ChatGPT. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, but ChatGPT now can read the background. If you use the installed app, it can read the background app you open up. So if you allow them, they can directly work with your IDE or Notepad. But again, old-fashioned, I don't like it automatically change anything. So I usually turn it off. Yeah. Sorry.
Very interesting though. Like I think that is where we all started, right? Like that is where our workflow really began. Like even before IDEs or CLI tools, where we began was ChatGPT. Like simply just copy paste the question or copy paste your email or copy paste the code and ask the question. So I think at the end of the day, the most important thing is the context. What is what is the thing that is enabling you to add the relevant context to your problem easily to pass it to the AI. So except for the model itself, the tool itself matters a lot. That's why I choose to use Cursor or Codex, because I don't have to do anything. I don't have to copy paste. It has the access to the code base. It'll read files. It'll grep, try to search for the relevant details before making changes. And it's still going on. So I'll leave it. And let's go back to Codex to see what it's doing. As you see, I mentioned it a while ago, and we saw from the Peter's blog as well. He said that Codex in CLI will end up reading for so long to understand the entire context before trying to solve a problem. Whereas you see in the plan mode, it reviewed the files at once in the beginning, a couple of files, it made changes, and then it read more files after making the changes. Whereas here, you see, it has not even started making a change, even a single line of change. All of this is just search, just reading and creating context for what it wants to solve. And this is something called agentic RAG, from what I know. The generic RAG is like you search, and that is like a cosine similarity to find relevant chunks of documents. And it'll always be, deterministic, but it can often lose the relevant context needed to solve a problem. And this works really well in agentic fashion, because now it has tools to read, search in particular folder, for example. It searched for conversation in pages. Pages is the top level directory for my code base. Then it read some relevant files. It listed all of the hooks that we have. Then it read two of those hooks. Then it searched something else which it found from this file. So, it kept on going until it is happy about, I have all of the context before I jump into solving the problem. See, still exploring. Still, all is just read, creating the context to solve the problem. And this is, I think, what makes Codex really, really, really sets it apart from all the other tools. Even though I am still a Cursor fanboy, but Codex just does it differently for some reason. I think it's also because OpenAI in general, I think they improved their GPT-5 Codex model and fine-tuned it specifically for tool calling in the context of their own Codex tool, Codex CLI. Like, all of these tools that you see, read, search, etc., they'll have some specific keyword internally. It'll say, search _ codebase or search _ folder name, something like that. Now, I believe, and I think I've seen others also point out the same thing. The main reason GPT-5 Codex works really well in Codex is because of this special fine-tuning of their, existing CLI tools, tool calling fields. So it has finally completed the first step, which is just audit and read all of the files. You see, the plan itself also was so different in Cursor and Codex here, because the first step here was completely just read files. And after that, it says, refactor, update, regression tests, etc. Whereas in Cursor, if we look at the plan, you see, this is more of a refactor plan. This is, nowhere does it say, do an audit of the entire code base before you start. It does say, investigate the current flow, and it does mention like 3 files, but that is not at all as complete as you would see in Codex. Like you saw, Codex did 50 files right now before starting. Okay, so since this is done, let's jump into our second section of this. Let me first read this real quick to see if it is actually complete. Exposed, ships, still ahead. It says wire the new hook. Okay, so it's still not complete. So I'll say again, continue. This is again the same problem, where it'll just stay in progress. It'll just say next steps, and you have to say continue. And it's if I look at the reasoning traces somewhere here, I'm definitely sure let me look at it. So this is what I'm talking about. You see, specifically, the model says here, time is tight, so I'm capturing where we stand right now with the major tasks and planning to share a progress. Well, I did not want that progress right now, right? Like I was happy to wait, but the model will just for some reason do this. And when I'll jump back to Codex, you'll see it will not do this. It will not do that at all. Let's see where Codex is. Yep, it started making changes now. Only changes to 2 or 3 files so far. And it says refactor is complete for the APIs. And now it will do some changes to the front-end state management.
Rohan, may I ask you a question?
Yep, go ahead.
All right. Yeah, thanks for putting this together and sharing this. And I have a question when we are talking about developing code, right, there is developing totally new way from the scratch. And I see that the AI can be used and giving all the specific detailed prompts as that, and it really go through and thinking about and coming up with. And also there is a case that we already have the existing code, right? And I guess AI can be used to analyze and improve or things like that. Let's say either way, there is well-working code, and it's the code base is big and complex. And now my question is maintenance code, right? For example, debugging cases, or a new requirement came and the new part of the feature need to be added in the existing code. Or another case is some change happen, an upgrade happen and to the existing code. So basically bug handling or the adding new features to the existing code or changing things. So could you share some of your experience that I see these things a little more easy to go through is when code base is smaller, but as the code base is getting bigger and more complex, is it possible to let the entire AI be able to go through and connecting and be able to actually debugging and adding feature and changing things, when especially the code base is complex and also complex system itself?
Yep. Thanks for your question. Yeah, I think this is a very relevant question, and that is also one of the biggest reasons why I did not pick some random small demo project, but my actual code base for Illinois chat. Because when these code bases become big, there are so many sparse information across different folders and files that having the right context before you make a change is a lot more important. And that's why I chose to show this plan mode feature specifically, which really helps in the cases where your code base is complex and big. So I think there are 2 things here. The first is the approach, and I'll get to the debugging versus feature adding part in a moment. But specifically to a big code base, I think there are 2 most important things. The first is the prompt, and the second is the context you give it. So the prompt itself, if it mentions, for example, if I had mentioned that I have a folder called chat in which I have all the chat-based files, then it would have helped the model to figure that out really well if my code base is very big. And context, again, works with the prompt. Since we are in an agentic fashion of retrieval here, if you mention that part in your prompt, it will be easier for the model to figure it out. Now coming to debugging versus adding a feature. So I would say I'm doing a bug fix, but it's rather not a bug fix, but a huge refactor on what is the design we use for sending a message from client to server and server to client. And once this is complete, we'll do a quick test on how we can debug if there are any problems. For example, I posted a video here in AI ML channel on last week where I was trying to solve the same problem. It was the same demo, and I just asked it to open the browser and actually test that stuff by clicking on sign in and then sending the message. So it actually tests end-to-end flow, which I would as a human in my manual testing, or what we would set up as end-to-end tests using Playwright in our code bases, which we can do like very easily now. Like when I recorded this, I was actually working on something else. I just wrote this prompt. I had it on one of my monitor, and I let it go, and I did not even look at it. And I actually viewed the video after it was complete before sending it to the group. And here you'll see like model first went to a chatbot which did not exist, figured out that I can create a new one, then figured out that there are chatbots that already exist, and then it went to one of those chatbots. Like it maneuvered its way to understanding even that there is some data missing in the database, and ignored the part which was not relevant. Because my use case here, or the prompt is not visible here, but my prompt specifically here was to send 5 follow-up messages in a chatbot and review whether everything works fine, and look at the network logs, server logs, and make changes. Here you see it figured out that there is one API that is giving 500, and then it actually fixed it, found the root cause, what was the problem. And this is after the refactor. Like we will do the same thing just now live, but this is what stands out to me in this particular form, right? Like even if it is a complex code base, if you have relevant context and good tools like this one, which can help you test end to end, then most of these problems can be offloaded to the AI. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thanks for answering that. Actually, the related question was this, like before AI, right? Like all the developer, let's say, use a Git code base or anyway code base like repo, and whenever new things added or debugging is there or changing thing happen, like we basically start from the existing code and based on the Git, right? Like so, all the code is basically changed by each developer purpose of debugging or changing or adding things, and it kind of maintained, right? Either the code quality is good or not. With AI, like we lead the amount of change as AI is doing such a thing. I'm imagining the code base could be quite different each time when AI is running, and also there's a different models and things like that. So if I compare code base of Git, the previous version and the next version, or in the past of human thing, it was trackable, right? Like each people kind of, they did it from the previous status. But with AI, the amount of change, I assume it's going to be like really different, like when you compare the diff. So like how does that, will now, as a developer, should we, if so, for example, if that case, do we have to change how we view, the Git system? Basically, those difference is not anymore relevant with a AI error. I mean, when we're using AI, it's more of the result based and the test based. Or sorry, am I clear or am I not?
Yes,
I can
definitely.
describe more. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right in the sense that models at many times tend to go in a different direction. Like for example, I am trying to solve a problem X, but the model found out that there is some code which is either not used, or it's just not in a format that it likes, or something is commented and it will just remove all of that, right? Maybe that is intended, but we never asked for it. And I've seen this happening multiple times. One of the very funny things with Claude models is that if it anywhere sees a model which is not Claude model, it'll just replace it. Like it'll replace it with itself, which is funny and weird. But I completely get your point. I think the challenge is real, and the way to solve it is there are two very important things. So first one is I mentioned rules. I think having very strict rules on what are the best practices and what are the design patterns that you're following in the code base are really helpful. I said 2 things, but I have 3 things in mind. The second thing is tests. I think test-driven development helps a lot because you set a deterministic path for the code, and if it changes, your mocks will break or something else will break, so you will be aware. And the third and the final thing is review process. I think for me at least, the bottleneck right now today is code review, because there are so many PRs that I have in progress, but I'm not able to review those code, all of those code PRs. So I think we need a good solution, and I am actually going to, I mentioned it briefly, that I will be exploring the / command for PR review. And in that PR review itself, we can have review rules in the sense that, what was the problem that we were trying to solve and what are the changes? Are they relevant or are they not? If not, what are the suggestions to remove some of the changes or add more changes? Does that help answer your question?
Yeah, and I'll also definitely agree with what you also said as well. So it sounds like the paradigm shift is going to happen together with a more advanced tool compared to the previous AI era versus after AI era hard software developing paradigm. Yeah.
Definitely, yeah. Thank you for your question. So I think we are almost at time and the model is still working. So let me do one thing. Just to demonstrate what I was trying to mention with which file am I in here? Okay, just to demonstrate what I would do when testing this would be something like this. Let me close this, bring this here, and I'll ask the model, can you please open my localhost 3000, log in with my credentials, rohan13@illinois.edu, the password is admin, and test the default chatbot by sending 5 messages in the same conversation. Also try to create another conversation and send 2 follow-up messages. And then let me know if there are any bugs, any server logs that indicate errors, or any network calls that indicate errors. And here I will demo it with this one new model, which is Cheetah. And as the name suggests, this model is extremely fast, and that is why I like it for specifically debugging purposes, because I'll just send it off and you'll see it'll use the browser so quickly. And if this is not the case, if you use any other model, you'll actually see how slow those models are and at looking at any of this. And it's trying to do something. Oh, actually I did something wrong. I did not enable the browser. And we'll see what the model does here. You see, it's so fast. This is all like real time. I'm not doing anything. And now it's trying to click on one of the chatbots, which doesn't exist. And I'm confident that it'll find that from the network calls and then switch over its strategy, just because that chatbot doesn't exist in my local system. And now it's checking the second one. That doesn't exist either. So you see, it figured out 404s are persisting in the network calls, and it will create a new chatbot. It clicks some random button, I think the privacy button here, and it created a new test bot and navigated to the chat page. and it ended. It did not do what I asked it to do. Go to the chatbots page, check one of the existing chatbots and complete your task. Let's do this. Let's see if it's able to do that. But you see how fast this entire process is. Whereas when we compare it to the one that's working in the plan mode on the other end, which is GPT-5 codex, it has been going on for almost an hour now. And it's still waiting on what to do. And it encountered some bug, I guess. And it closed the error. And it did not do what I asked it to do. Anyway, I wanted to demonstrate this, and we are above time. One last thing that I want to share before we end here is, one of the main things here is context, and you see here there is a loader which tells me how much of my context is filled. And I often find that when I have a long conversation, especially like for example we'll look at here, this is at 53.9, but I'm confident that at some point here in the conversation, this stuff was summarized to reduce this context from 100%. And I think this is something to really keep an eye out for. And every tool now shows this. Like for example, let's look at Codex. I think even Codex shows how much context is left. I think this is really important to look at because this lets you know whether there will be some performance degradation or is the model working at its best. Anything above 65 to 75% of context, your model will really degrade in performance. So just something to keep an eye out for. If there are any questions, I'm happy to take now, but if not, then I think we are good to end here. Any questions? I can share the progress update of both of these tasks later in the channel while the models finish them. Well, if not, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.